My name is Peter Losher. I'm with Internet Systems Consortium, and I'm here to talk about a little incident that happened about 10 days ago. So first, I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview. ISC operates one of the 13 DNS root servers out on the internet. We globally anycast the service from AS3557. We are at over 55 sites worldwide, and 4 of those nodes are what we consider global nodes, where AS3557 actually doesn't peer with anyone directly anymore. We have what we call management ASs. So in the case of the global node, it's fully within AS1280, which is our wide area network, which if you're in North America, hopefully you're already peering with. The remainder of these nodes are considered local nodes. And so the concept of a local node is that we're serving a local community, whether it's an IX, a network access point, or if you're in a small country in, say, Africa, the major telco. We restrict the traffic via the no export BGP community string. And for each one of these local nodes, we have a per node specific management AS, which then peers with either the route server or peers directly with participants. So you see, if you're looking at the route path, you're seeing AS3557, our management AS, and then the peer on that particular IX or NAP or a route server, as the case may be. We try to drive traffic wherever possible to a local node. We do this for various reasons. We want to disperse the DNS traffic as wide as possible and get it closer to the end users wherever possible. So say someone in Bangladesh doesn't have to query their traffic and have it go all the way to California. We want to hit Hong Kong, or in our case, we actually have a local node in Dhaka, and the traffic should just stay inside the country. This also has other benefits in the cases of DDoSes and so forth, as have been seen over the years, where we've been able to mitigate the traffic by spreading it over several local nodes rather than have all the traffic trunk over the over the Atlantic or the Pacific to our global nodes. So we do that by obviously we prepend our AS several times from our global nodes. So you'll see like AS1280, AS1280, AS1280 to make sure that the local nodes always have a shorter path. So if you want more information about this, we do have a blog post that my colleague Leo Bicknell wrote that explains this in a little bit more detail. We also, on the global nodes, advertise covering /23 instead of a 24 and a /47 to cover those edge cases so no one is left behind. So a little bit about F-Root in Beijing. We actually operate 2 instances of F in China. We've been there since about 2004. One is sponsored by APNIC. That's the one that's been there the longest. We recently turned up another one back in the summer, which is sponsored by CNNIC. We operate the service, but the local sponsors usually cover co-location and handle network connectivity and so forth, but ISC directly still operates the service. Both of these nodes have connectivity to the national telcos and research and educational networks. So we have access to, say, China Telecom, China Unicom, you name it. They have their own dedicated management ASs. So at PEK1, we're at AS23707, and PEK2, we're at AS55439. So those are the immediate upstreams of, say, AS3557 at those locations. The PEK1 is still just IPv4 direct, IPv4 only. The other is dual stack IPv4 and IPv6. In PEK1, we're connected to the Beijing NAP, and PEK2, we're actually hosted by CNNIC, and then they export our routes over to the telcos and research networks. So in traffic numbers, actually Beijing is one of our largest local nodes. So what happened? On October the 1st, at the time indicated, there was a leak of our IPv6 network block from PEK2 to the IPv6 internet at large. The leak originated from AS37944, which is the China Science and Technology Network, basically an R&E network. Actually, it was easy to find out because they are currently our only v6 peer. So the leak propagated from that AS to Hurricane over the Hong Kong Internet Exchange, and then from Hurricane to the world. So ISC was made aware of the issue about 24 hours later, and once we verified the attack, or verified the leak, we pulled the IPv6 announcement straight away. And Nanog goes wild. So there was a nice long thread about this. So I wanted to clarify some issues. My colleague Leo Bicknell addressed some of these already, but just to point out, there was no rewriting of answers. We actually checked this before we actually pulled the route. Any traffic that came from that particular location wasn't getting rewritten by the Great Firewall of China and so forth. And the other fact is that this actually affected less than 0.4 of our global traffic flows. Now, granted, this is partially because it's IPv6, but the other point is maybe you can say we've actually made some progress because at IPv6 day, everyone was chomping at the bit that we got 0.2 of global traffic. So, hey, we've made an increase. But in that particular case, this is basically mostly of global traffic. If you were actually peering with us directly at any one of our other local nodes where we already had a v6 session enabled, in that particular case, you would be most likely using that node anyway because its AS path would have been shorter than the leaked AS path to Beijing. And we have seen no sign that there was any malicious intent to divert traffic, someone sticking a hijacked route, or anything like that. This looks to have simply been someone accidentally stripping out our no export and propagating the route to their upstreams. And in fact, we actually deal with about a handful of these every single year. Most of the time you never hear about it. Someone from an R&E network leaking out to another R&E network and you find the route's gone halfway or circled the world at least twice. But it's something we take very seriously and we investigate, and it's usually taken care of. So some takeaways from this. There needs to be more and better BGP monitoring, especially with IPv6. I mean, we'd all like it if we could get BGP monitors on every AS and have a complete view of the world, but obviously that's likely not possible. We are looking at various options ourselves, whether or not we use something. We've been talking with RIPE about doing some stuff with Atlas as a possible mechanism. There may be other BGP type services that we may investigate in future. Obviously, we'd like more IPv6 peers wherever possible. So those are the usual URLs. Third, the internet needs more diverse IPv6 connections. The IPv6 table is still relatively flat, and basically for IPv6, it's usually, yes, but I have provider, that's all I need. Well, could you get at least a little bit more diversity? So, so please check. I know most of our providers in the Bay Area, we're mostly dual stack, so please check to make sure that your provider is offering v6 and try to peer with them so it's just not one provider. And last but not least, for those that decry the fact that there might be some shenanigans and DNS rewriting going on, please deploy DNSSEC. Sign your zones, turn on validation. At the end of the day, if you're worried about the fact that oh my God, we're getting DNS responses from X country and they might be rewritten, well, the route's signed. A lot of CCTLDs are signed, or a lot of TLDs are signed. make the effort to sign. If you're truly worried about your online presence, take control and sign your bloody zones and turn on DNSSEC validation. And that's it.
Rock on, thanks. Oh, so we have a question.
Hi, Todd Underwood, Google. So I have left my tinfoil hat back in the office. So this is not a question about nefarious hijacking. Obviously, everything you say seems completely reasonable. The question is really straightforwardly, and it's genuinely a question because I don't understand. Why do root name server operators choose to provide service from a network that has promised to rewrite answers and then hope that it won't leak too far? And this is not a question saying that China doesn't have every right to implement whatever censorship it wants to implement. They do. This is not to say that other countries or hotels don't have the right to implement whatever kind of censorship they want to. They do. I just only want to be subject to the censorship that I have either opted into or been foisted upon me by virtue of my passport. So can you answer the question why you do this?
Well, I can only speak for F.
Sure.
I can't speak for the other root server operators. We feel that we provide an apolitical service, that basically the world community has every right to good, clean DNS services. And we make every effort to make sure the answers that we give out are the correct and the correct answers wherever possible. Once they get out to a provider's upstream, we have no control over it at that point. Now, as we've had this conversation before, we make every effort. If we find any sort of shenanigans going on, we immediately pull the route and investigate.
So this is actually my question. I can promise you there's shenanigans going on with the data you're providing in China. In fact, the Chinese government has promised you, and they've explained what those shenanigans are, and you've chosen to pick those as your upstreams. So if this weren't a country, if you had 3 upstreams, and one of them said, hey, by the way, I'm going to rewrite the answers you give, and 2 of them didn't, and you picked the first one, this would be the situation we're in. It's not a political question. I'm not saying that the Chinese people don't have a right to fast, reliable name service. I'm just saying the rest of us have a right to not have your answers rewritten.
We make every effort wherever possible.
Thank you.
We make every effort wherever possible. I mean, the thing is that we try to keep the local traffic local wherever possible. And so we do the no export. Once we find a leak, we investigate and pull it. At the end of the day, the end solution, and I'm going to sound like a broken parrot, is that DNSSEC needs to be applied. At that point, you don't care where the bloody answers come from, as long as you can verify that the answer was correct as it was signed. And on top of that, there's also the issue of all of a sudden my 80 milliseconds got routed to 300 milliseconds. The DNS infrastructure will sort of self-clean because it'll find a closer name server that will, there are 12 other root servers out there. They'll depref us and go do someone else. So.
We have time for
It's just
one more
expansion on that.
Okay, this is the last question. Then I'll have to Godwin this thread.
All I was going to say is I'm Jim Martin with ISC as well. The bottom line is that we are providing a network service. We're not making any judgments about what is right or wrong in any country. We don't believe that it's our place to be making a decision about what's right or wrong. Because just because we believe one thing doesn't mean that that's the appropriate thing in every environment. What we do believe in is providing the clean route everywhere in the world that we can, because we believe that that's something that is fundamental for the growth of the internet. And so I think the basis of your question has to do with an assumption that what they're doing is wrong, and we're not prepared to make that assumption.
Yeah. So
sorry,
I will be at the DNS track if you want to continue this further.
Yeah, take it. You were waiting patiently. We have time for the one more. You were waiting quite
I
patiently.
actually have a fairly quick technical question, actually. Richard Barnes, BBN. So you mentioned 2 things. You mentioned that it took about 24 hours before you guys became aware of the change in the routing here, and that you deal with several similar events every year. So I was wondering if you could comment on whether the delay here between the change in the routing and your awareness and reaction to it was typical, how that compared to the other events you typically handle.
Well, part of it is that it was a weekend, so I mean, this is discussions we're having internally. 24 hours was a bit long. So as far as we're concerned, so we're looking at measures to try to, in this particular case, it was also a very slow drip. It was V6. We were only seeing a very small section of our traffic getting rerouted, but obviously seeing something like a route detection change where all of a sudden all of our global V6 traffic is diverted to China should have probably, or diverted to a particular location, should have thrown up a red flag. So, thanks.